share today. I call it the Great Cosmic Split. I would like to dedicate it to William Blake and his idea of the divine imagination, which is something that we have not been paying much attention to in this age of pragmatism and cynicism. We are forgetting the imagination. So in an attempt to do honor to Blake and to rescue the divine imagination, I would like to share the myth of the cosmic split with you. It goes as follows. In the beginning of time as we understand it, the cosmos was split into two symmetrical but very, very different halves. We could call these two halves the physical realm and the mythical realm. Mythical as in myth, not as in mystical. Now, the physical realm is the one we associate mostly with the laws of physics, science, and logic. In the physical realm, things and events unfold according to the laws of cause and effect. This is the realm of form, the realm of matter, and the laws of cause and effect that govern how events unfold in this realm, they are blind in a way. They are automatisms. They unfold based on the configuration of matter and energy across space and time, and they have no relationship whatsoever to emotion, to meaning, to any of these things. So the physical realm is the realm of form, but it lacks all meaning, and events unfold according to cause and effect. The mythical realm, on the other hand, is the realm of meaning itself. There, events unfold according to associations of meaning, and according to the evocations of the affections, the emotions that correspond to these meanings. Perhaps some examples would help here. For instance, if we talk about the physical realm, if you jump off a building, the cause, you will fall, the effect, regardless of what your emotions are about it, regardless of whatever meaning you see or lend to it. In the mythical realm, things operate differently. For instance, think of a dream. A dream is a good analogy to the mythical realm. If you see the image of a crying baby in a dream, that may evoke in you the feeling of pain, and you would then associate this meaning of pain to some other meaning, like a doctor approaching you with a flask of medicine to heal your pain. That image in turn has the meaning of healing, of calm, of peace, which you may associate with yet another image which carries a meaning, like the image of yourself sitting by a beautiful waterfall surrounded by trees and singing birds, and that meaning evokes the affection of peace and contentment in you. So you go from a crying baby to a doctor and a flask of medicine to a waterfall, trees and singing birds. And these images, or these events, if you will, they are not connected at all by relationships of cause and effect, like in the physical realm. They are connected by associations of meaning, the meaning of pain, which leads to the meaning of healing, which leads to the meaning of peace and contentment, and so on and so forth. So these are very different, albeit symmetrical realms. Symmetrical in what way? The physical realm retains the form, and events unfold according to automatic cause and effect laws. The mythical realm, on the other hand, retains meaning, not form, and instead of unfolding automatically according to cause and effect, events unfold according to the associations of meaning that are inherent in them. We can speak of the unfolding of events in the physical realm as a chain of causality, a chain of cause and effect, one thing causing another, which in turn causes another, and so on and so forth. A chain of causality. Analogously, in the mythical realm, we can speak of a chain of meaning, the evocation of one meaning leading to another meaning, which in turn evokes another meaning, and so on and so forth. A chain of meaning. The key point of this myth, however, is that to every chain of causality in the physical realm, there always corresponds a chain of meaning in the mythical realm. We human beings and all life exists in both realms simultaneously. The part of ourselves that is present in the physical realm has traditionally been called a body. The part of ourselves that is in the mythical realm has traditionally been called a soul. I don't read any more meaning in these two words other than what I describe in this myth. But the point is, every chain of causality that your body witnesses has to be coupled to a chain of meaning that your soul witnesses. And these chains cannot unfold without one another. In other words, the chain of causality is not self-contained. It's not causally closed, if you will. It is not independent. It cannot run like a clock without associated meanings unfolding in the chain of meaning in the mythical realm. These things are codependent. Similarly, the chain of meaning cannot unfold without the chain of causality. They communicate to one another in such a way that they keep one another going in a kind of tangled hierarchy. To make it more explicit, the chain of causality cannot unfold without an input of meaning from the mythical realm, that input coming from the associated twin chain of meaning, if you will. We tend to think of the physical realm as close, as autonomous and independent, but the laws of physics only specify envelopes of probability for what events can actually happen. There is no law in physics that actually specifies what specific event will materialize, will come into existence. Physics only talks about probabilities. So the idea in the myth is that it is the input from the mythical realm in the form of a meaning from the chain of meaning that coalesces those probabilities into one specific event that actually happens in the physical realm, that translates probabilities into a form, a concrete form, in the sense of matter and energy according to a certain configuration in space-time. Without that input, there would be no chain of causality. One event wouldn't lead to another because nothing would coalesce out of the cloud of probabilities that physics talks about. Very analogously on the other side, without the input of images, form from the physical realm, meaning could not be evoked in the mythical realm. In the example we discussed a couple of minutes ago, we talked about the images of crying babies and doctors and flasks of medicine and waterfalls and trees. All these are images that derive from the unfolding of form in the physical realm. So for there to be a dynamic chain of meaning in the mythical realm, the meaning has to be evoked through an input of form from the physical realm. This is how these two chains are inherently coupled to one another. They unfold in lockstep. They are the two sides of the same coin, if you will, two ways of looking at the same thing, ultimately. The mythical is inherently dependent on the physical. The physical is inherently dependent on the mythical. The physical provides form that enables the unfolding of the mythical. The mythical provides meaning that enables the unfolding of the physical. That's the key central idea in this myth. So what can we make of this? You see, what this myth tells us is that there isn't a purely physical explanation to any event, in the same way that there isn't a purely mythical, symbolic, meaningful explanation to any event. Since the two chains, the chain of causality and the chain of meaning, are inherently coupled to one another and they unfold in lockstep, any event, anything, any phenomenon necessarily has a physical, causal explanation according to the chain of causality, and a meaningful, symbolical, mythical explanation according to the unfolding of the corresponding chain of meaning. So it is naive in our culture that when we find a physical explanation for something that historically has had only a mythical explanation, we say, we don't need the myth anymore, we don't need the symbols anymore, because now we found the physical explanation. This is naive according to this myth. The physical explanation merely complements the symbolic explanation, the myth that explains the phenomenon. It doesn't invalidate the mythical explanation. To adopt purely the explanation according to the causal chain, the physical realm, is one-sided, in the same way that adopting purely the mythical, symbolic explanation according to the chain of meaning in the mythical realm is also one-sided. And what is interesting in our history as a civilization, according to this myth again, is that we have always been one-sided, on either extreme. Traditional cultures, like Aboriginal cultures, South American Indians, paganism in Europe and so on, they have been very one-sided towards the mythical, towards the symbolic explanation, towards the chain of meaning, the chain of evocative images, the chain of symbols. Our modern culture, on the other hand, has swung all the way to the other extreme. Now we only talk about cause and effect. We only talk about the unfolding of the chain of causality, and we completely ignore, even deny and put down the symbolic explanation, the unfolding of the chain of meaning. We seem to have this tendency of always being very one-sided. We have adopted this logic of mutual exclusivity, like if you go to your doctor and your doctor says, your health problems are related to a misalignment of your backbone or something, you think that explains everything. So if your acupuncture practitioner has told you before that the source of your problem was a blockage in the flow of qi in your body, you would think, well, that guy was wrong because it's just a misalignment of my backbone. Well, maybe both are right. Maybe your traditional Chinese practitioner and his symbolic explanation to your problem according to the chain of meaning, in the sense that he told you that your problem is that the energy of life, the qi, has blockages and it's not really flowing properly along your body and it's leading to problems. That symbolic explanation may be true simultaneously with the fact that your doctor may also be right in that you just have a backbone misalignment. One thing doesn't cancel out the other. Our mutually exclusive logic, according to this myth, is arbitrary. It's an invention of the value system of our culture today. There is always a physical explanation according to the unfolding of the chain of causality, and a mythical, symbolic explanation according to the unfolding of the chain of meaning. One does not live without the other, because these chains cannot unfold without input from the other. Input in the form of form from the chain of causality to the chain of meaning, and input in the form of meaning from the chain of meaning to the chain of causality. So if we want to influence and change our lives, we have two levers, always two levers that we can manipulate. One is the unfolding of the chain of causality. To manipulate that, we should understand the laws of physics and we should guide our actions according to that understanding. The more our actions are in accordance with an accurate understanding of the laws of logic and physics, the more effectively will we be able to influence the chain of causality. Science and technology do precisely that. The former understands the rules behind the chain of causality, and the latter uses these rules to change and influence the chain of causality. But we have another lever. We can influence our lives by influencing the unfolding of meaning in the chain of meaning, how one symbol, one evocative symbol, unfolds into another. And if we do that, we will automatically influence the chain of causality as well, because again, they are coupled, they unfold in lockstep. This part we tend to forget in our Western modern culture. We tend to forget about feeding our soul, if you will, with evocative images, feeding our soul with myths, with symbols that evoke meaning, that evoke affection, and which thereby can potentially influence the unfolding of the chain of meaning and influence how our lives, our integral lives across both realms unfold. We, as human beings, according to this myth, live in both realms simultaneously. By focusing on either symbol and meaning alone or cause and effect alone, we are not doing ourselves a favor. We are cutting half of our degrees of freedom away. So this has been our myth for today. And note that this myth of the cosmic split, within the context that the myth itself lays out, it belongs to the mythical realm. So if the myth were to be right, the myth itself is food for the unfolding of the chain of meaning. It provides evocative images to help us live in the world of the soul, to help us influence the unfolding of the chain of meaning, and perhaps ultimately influence our lives. But then again, this is just a myth. If you'd like to know more about the philosophy underlying this myth, I would recommend 3 works. The first is Carl Jung's book Synchronicity and a Causal Connecting Principle. Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung and his collaborator, physicist Wolfgang Pauli, were the first to postulate the existence of a sort of connecting principle in nature that was not based on cause and effect, but based on associations of meaning. They called it Synchronicity, and the book is a very short book, but it's a very worthwhile book. Another interesting book, and much more recent, is Patrick Harpur's The Philosopher's Secret Fire, a history of the imagination. There, Harpur very cogently, very convincingly even, discusses this artificial differentiation that our modern culture has made between literal truth and metaphorical truth. He says that in the world of the soul, in the world of the imaginal, this differentiation is completely arbitrary and artificial. And this idea also lies heavily behind the myth that you just heard. And finally, the last work that I would like to refer to is my own book, Meaning in Absurdity, where I explore a cosmology, if you will, that has a lot to do with the myth you've just heard, but it lays it out in a much more systematic, a much better substantiated way.